Hey everyone, welcome to another Musings on for album releases from specific years. So in this video we're going to be looking at album releases from 1983. So let's see where we end up. As always, I'm going to start off just a quick overview of like some of the best-selling albums, number one albums, through the lens of the the UK, what was doing well in the UK. Then I'll look at what albums that were notable for me at the time. I actually bought them when they came out. That's the first criteria. So I had to have bought them literally, within the moment they came out, pretty much. And then they still have, fond memories, and I still enjoy them today when I listen to them. And then we'll get on to some of the stuff maybe I listened to later, or I forgot about, or I never listened to, and I've subsequently listened to. So we'll see it's an interesting year musically, certainly, and there's a lot of albums, as you can see. There's not that many up here which I listened to when they came out, because for various reasons, a lot of the albums from '83 I didn't listen to until maybe '84, '85. So that's why they're not up here. And as I go through in this video, I'll sort of explain as we go along. First sort of partial reason for that, I suppose, is '83 for me was quite a strange year. We're sort of leading into '84, which was, I would say, the first half of '84 was particularly bad for me. We'll talk about when we talk to the '84, when I talk about '84 albums in a later video. But yeah, I got really sick in '84, and maybe like '83 was the build up to that probably didn't contribute, or didn't help contributed to that. So yeah, '83 was really up and down, like real highs, and then the year sort of finished off with a bit of quite a bit of a downer. So at the time I was in this really cool job. I was working in immunology. I just finished the second year of college, which I was doing in parallel with work. The firm I worked for was sort of send you off to college like one day a week, it was either one whole day for some colleges, or from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, or it was from 9 to about 5, and then on a different day from 6 till 9. So on the day where it was, all day, or during the day, you basically went to college instead of going to work. For the evening sessions, obviously that was after work, if you were doing it on a different day, or just a follow on. So either way, the evening sessions were pretty strenuous, because you've either done a full day work, and then you've got from about 6 to 9 in the evening, which is normally maybe a couple of lessons in the evening, depending on what it is. If it's a lab-based session, then it might be the whole thing. But the thing is, like I said, whichever way you cut it, you've either got 9 to 9 of college all day, solid back-to-back lessons with just breaks maybe for lunch and a couple of tea breaks here. All study. Because all your homework, there's no free periods, that sort of thing, because all your follow-up work you do outside of work. So all the write up for all the labs you're doing during the day, so you might be doing 2, maybe 3 labs as well, during the course of that. So that means you've got to do all your write-up work outside of the college day in the evenings as well. So it's pretty heavy going if you've ever had to experience that. So it's just coming up to the end of that finished off, there would have been June maybe, I'm just trying to think. Yeah. And then middle of the year, but literally actually the day that was the last day of college, so maybe June, maybe July, I bought my first car. So that was really cool. Went on a really cool trip down to Cornwall with a friend. Went camping for a week, and so yeah, I literally bought the car, and within about a week I was going on this really long car journey, which was good. It's like a trial by fire, so that was good. And then I found out that there was going to be some real big changes at work, which meant me having to basically either move around the country completely unassisted financially, because I was pretty young at that point, and only certain people in the firm got offered compensation for moving, like all the senior technicians and all the managers. And a lot of people couldn't go because it meant, moving family, and it wasn't really worth it. So yeah, we ended up in this position where, you've had part of the firm move and a lot of people remain behind. So what jobs were up for grab? And there'd been like a higher freezing prior to that, because they knew that firm was moving. So a lot of the vacancies were sort of plugged, which would have been available through normal channels. So what had happened, where it was a bit of a downer for me, is I went for an interview for this job I really wanted in another lab, in an R&D lab, and I was really hopeful. They said, "Oh yeah, the interview went great, Rob. We really want to employ you," and all this, that, and the other. And then when it came to sort of doing the numbers, there actually wasn't a vacancy anymore, because the positions had been filled by those more senior people who had been left behind because they didn't move. So yeah, the job that was supposedly up for grabs wasn't really up for grabs. So it was sort of given to people that actually never went for the interview, so they didn't have to re-interview. Whereas the junior staff, all the junior techs, anybody that wasn't a senior tech or above, had to sort of re-interview for positions. So you ended up with a job at the end of it, but you didn't end up with basically what you wanted. So that was quite a big downer. So that really sort of made the end of the year a bit of a bit of a bittersweet period after having a really cool year, and everything was sort of moving in that direction, and things were really cool at work, and at work we were going sort of clubbing quite a bit, and and then boom. So then into 84, that was a really sort of bad year in terms of my health. Really suffered for other reasons. I got a really bad virus, but I'll talk a little bit about that in another episode. We don't want to dwell too much on the bad things of the past. Let's get into the good stuff. But just, it's good to know sort of what was going on that year, I think. And a lot of people like when I sort of talk about intermingle the music side of things with, my general zeitgeist at the time. So as I've been twittering away here, you've probably seen already there was quite a number of well-known albums that were doing that well that year. Some had previously been released in 82. So this one I really remember because, of course, if you happen to be going clubbing in 83, this was being played a lot. We've got No Parlays by Paul Young, which came out in 83. So Thriller came out in 82, very late 82. No Parlays 83. Colour by Numbers Culture Club 83. Let's Dance 83. A lot of our artists had really big albums in 83. Fantastic by Wham. True by Spandau Ballet, I think that came in 83, yeah. And then there's these now what I call music floating around. This was the first one of those, actually. Yeah, these became a real pain on the charts because they would just they would literally dog pile in on the best-selling albums every year. And I think at some point after this, they did separate the charts out into these various artist compilations and albums or compilation albums by a single artist, and they separated it out. But yeah, at this point, if you looked at the weekly charts, they'd be sort of inundated with now what I call music 1, 2, whatever, and everybody sort of jumped on the bandwagon. So this was 12th studio album, came out 83. And we'll get a bit of a better look at these. Oh, did this have Dancing on the Ceiling and Hello on it? We'll see when we go through. Synchronicity came out. Eurythmics, that came out pretty early in the year, 83. Snap, Greatest Hits album from 83. his first album came out in 83. So yeah, loads of really cool stuff here. Rio was 82. The Crossing was 83. War was 83. So was, I think their live album, Live at Red Rocks. Was it Under a Blood Red Sky? Yeah, there we go. That was 83 as well, towards the end of the year. Toto 4, that was 82. So that would have been Africa. And was it Rosanna? I think was on that as well. Yeah. And not surprisingly, because that other album was doing well, the debut album by Lionel Richie was in the charts. So if you look at sort of week by week #1 albums. So here's the John Lennon collection, Raiders of the Pop Charts. So this is where you sometimes see as well stuff that wasn't best selling. Some of these various artists' greatest hits type things bubble through for like a week or so. I don't know if anybody remembers this album, but looks like what happened with this is that it took it for a while to sort of come through in the UK. So this came out in 81 in Australia, released in 82 in the US, and then the UK it peaked. I don't know if it peaked again. They think was it Down Under, whatever the song's called. I'm trying to remember. I come from a land down under. There's Thriller coming back in. War in 83, Thriller again, The Hurting, The Final Cut. So unused material from The Wall. And you can hear that as well. There's at least one track on here which definitely sounds like it belongs on The Wall. Oh, this has that got Total Eclipse of the Heart on it? I think so. Let's Dance, of course, 83, True, Thriller again. So this gives you some idea of why, when I was sort of going clubbing quite a bit through this year, I was hearing this tracks off of here a lot. I see Billie Jean, Beat It, the title track, Thriller. I don't know if everybody remembers that whenever the big video for that was released and sort of premiered in the UK on one of the channels, Synchronicity, fantastic. Oh, You and Me Both. When did that come out? 83, yeah. So, Yazoo album. No Parlay, we'd already seen. Labour of Love by UB40, which was cover versions. Colour by Numbers, second album. Interesting. Why did that always feel like it came out earlier in the year, 83, All Night Long? Hello was 84 actually, okay. Yeah, I remember this coming out. So they played that a lot in the clubs. Okay. Let's move on to the stuff that I bought as it came out. So early in the year, March 83, bought this album. This came out, I think, as a single album, but it came out as a sort of like double. It looked like a double album. I think I'll have to check it out. It's not really in reachable distance actually at the moment. So, but yeah. I don't think I've got the limited edition double LP. Yeah, maybe my memory's not serving me well. Bear with me. It's going to bug me now. Oh, well, what do you know? I do. Crikey. Given with Vertigo, yeah, okay, so I do have that. Wow, well, shows you how long ago I actually played it, because nowadays, of course, most of the time I play this album is streaming. But yeah, wow. Okay, record 2. So yeah, I do have that one with the extra tracks in it. I keep threatening to do this, don't I? I really do need to go through my record collection. My vinyl, because it'll be pretty interesting, because there's so much stuff that I know I've got, but I just don't remember the formats, because I've sort of rebought them over the years, and now of course everything's streamed, but I've made a conscious effort of keeping hold of all my vinyl. My wife's still got quite a bit of vinyl left, but over time she's sort of got rid of it. So what's on here? Because I digressed. Okay, so we have Thunder and Lightning. Yep. Sun Goes Down, Cold Sweat, Holy War. Yeah, so some real classics. For me, I think my favourite, as much as I like this album, my favourite Lizzie period runs from Jailbreak. Probably. I mean, Fighting's a pretty good album, but really Jailbreak, Johnny the Fox, Bad Reputation, and then into Black Rose Rock Legends. That's when I always think they peak. Now, of course, Black Rose Rock Legend has a different lineup, because you've got Gary Moore on here instead of Brian Robertson. Brian Robertson did play on Bad Reputation, but my understanding is that he played on there sort of quite far into the sessions, and there's a lot more Scott Gorham guitar probably on here than usual. And I did enjoy the Snowy White period in Lizzie, actually, but it's got a completely different sound to it, I think. Yeah, so it's still got that double guitar sound, but Snow White brings an interesting sort of dimension into sound, I think, just the way he plays. And of course then he went off and had a fairly successful early solo career when with that single Bird of Paradise, at least in the UK anyway. So yeah, and he'd had a successful career actually as a live guitarist in Pink Floyd prior to joining Thin Lizzy. So yeah, so this was their last album they recorded when if you exclude the live album, when Phil Lynott was still alive. So yeah, it's got John Sykes in it, of previously of Tugs of Pantang. He also went on to have a solo career, and he was in Whitesnake, and trying to remember if he's been in any other bands apart from his sort of various iterations of sort of post Phil Lynott Thin Lizzy. Anyway, Eliminator. Oh, we played this so much in the house. Yeah. Give Me All Your Loving, Sharp Dressed Man. I also remember them playing on the Tube TV show, which was on a Friday evening. Yeah. And this one had real interesting use of synthesizers and loop beats. Yeah, it was really cool actually, I thought, what they did here. So it was, and these opening three tracks, Give Me All Your Loving, Got Me Under Pressure, Sharp Dressed Man. That was a really strong start to the album. I don't know if you remember the fluffy guitars and the car and the videos with the car and very much of its time. This Because when did MTV start? Let's have a look. 81, yeah. So those videos really helped them in the sort of MTV era. Same with Twisted Sister. There was this album. So this is where Brian Robertson went via Wild Horses. So after he left Thin Lizzy, he was in Wild Horses for a while. This band, who was the other guy in there? Yeah, Jimmy Bain. Neil Carter was also in Wild Horses as well. He was in UFO and played with Gary Moore. So this album, I really like this album. It's got a real different sound to it. Really different sounds. Yeah. It did sound really good. And his playing on it is just amazing. I mean, I've always really liked Brian Robertson's guitar playing. And I first sort of became aware of him when he was in Thin Lizzy. But it was really cool to see this. Also, with the original album, there was this really cool cartoon. No, I won't be able to reach that. That came in here, like as an insert as well, which had also, I think the cartoon had previously featured in probably Sounds magazine, and then they were sort of reproduced in here, or vice versa. I can't remember which way around it was. Yeah. I always remember seeing pictures about yeah, it was wearing satin shorts and stuff on the espadrilles apparently. It just looked really odd, some of the photos I saw with him in, like, they looked like running shorts to me actually. Yeah. And then there was a gap. They did this compilation album with 4 new tracks, and then they reconfigured the band. So it went from a 3-piece to a 4-piece. So Brian, after this album, they got rid of Brian Robertson and got in Wurzel and Phil Campbell, who had been in. Phil Campbell was originally in what was that band? Persian Risk. That was it. So there's all these interesting sort of Nawubum era bands, which a lot of people may not have heard of, and then probably become aware of because members of the bands in those fledgling bands then end up in bigger bands. Yeah. Shout at the Devil, second Motley Crue album. I basically just bought the first 2 Motley Crue albums and that was it. This is another one where I think I've got a gatefold sleeve. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, it's gatefold sleeve. This one is a single album. I don't think it's like the Lizzy one where it's with the gatefold sleeve one. You've got the extra live tracks. There are bonus tracks, as always is the case, I think, on remastered CDs and various other things, and you get all these box sets as well with all manner of stuff in it, all manner of box set shenanigans. Oh, this album, I loved this when this came out. I still love it now. I really liked Randy Rhoads, but I also really like J.K. Lee. Ozzy Osbourne could certainly pick guitarists. Bark at the Moon, Centre of Eternity, Rock and Roll Rebel. I played this so much because it came out in November 83, and I bought my first car in middle of 83. And when the other reason why there's not many albums that I bought that year when they came out was because I was saving up for this car. And I remember when we went down to Cornwall in the summer, having this cassette player, literally, like I'd borrowed, I think, off one of my brothers. They had like a little mono cassette player to play stuff in because I couldn't afford a cassette player for the car. Like it had cleaned me out, like buying this car. And I can also remember around that time, I think it was, where like I probably just had enough money. I had to be really careful like what trips I took in the car, because I had probably enough money to put in a certain amount of money in petrol each week, and so I had to make sure I didn't have to go to work. So I was pretty selective with my spending, and I cut back a lot on music spending as a consequence. But somewhere towards the end of the year, sort of after the summer, I think, I bought like the cheapest cassette player for the car I could, and then I think I went on to Maplin, which was the sort of UK equivalent of Radio Shack, and at that point they didn't have stores. You could only ever buy it mail order, but they were really quick. And I remember buying the sort of cheapest speakers I could afford and wiring it all up, and this was one of probably the early cassettes I bought. I just remember playing this in the car a lot. So let's go through 83 in music. You can sort of see where I was going through this a few days ago just to see if there was anything I really wanted to listen to again or hadn't listened to at all. So you can see we've got an early Bryan Adams. I didn't really start listening to Bryan Adams until the albums after this, because I had a couple of friends who were really into the next few albums that came out. But I do remember this, Pyromania. Yeah. I don't remember why I didn't put it up here actually, because I really do like this album, and I did buy it. I'm pretty sure I bought it when it came out. Yeah. I think the problem with this is I really loved the first two albums so much. I think what happened was I know what happened. I was listening to that second album still, because I can remember that second album, High and Dry, becoming the soundtrack to the holiday in Cornwall. I had that album, which I transferred over to cassette. I had a Ramones album, and I had one of the Cheap Trick albums. I don't know, it was one of the early ones. Never Surrender by Triumph. My middle brother was a big Triumph fan, so we had a copy of this in the house. I think I might have even bought a copy ultimately. Making Contact. Didn't buy. This is one of the UF albums that I didn't buy. It's got some really strong tracks on it. But by then I sort of, there's a period of UFO where I sort of didn't keep up, which is probably around that time. And I bought Wild, the Willing and the Innocent, and then got hold of a copy of Mechanics, I think, and didn't really buy an album by them when it came out until the album with Atomic Tommy, where I actually saw them live in Brighton for that tour. So Kilroy Was Here. I had a weird cover on it. I probably remember it more than the cover. I never listened to it. Subterranean Jungle. I have this. I'm pretty sure I bought this when it came out. But see, again, this is sometimes happens a lot, is you sort of get a gateway album for a band, say, like the first thing you buy by them, and then immediately you become hooked, and for whatever reason, maybe the album's not that strong, or you lock into another track, and then you go off down a side tangent. So I can remember probably not long buying Road to Ruin. So the only track I have real memories of this album is every time I eat vegetables, it makes me think of you. That's the only one. Even though I have it on vinyl, but I just can't remember when I bought it. I bought War by U2 sometime in 84. I do know that much. So there was this album, and I'll flag up a few more where, yeah, it was a bit of a delayed response. So War by U2 was one of them, and they've gone on to be real favourites of mine, but I just didn't buy them when they came out. First Rock Goddess album, I remember them getting played a lot on the Friday Rock Show, which I was still listening to quite a bit by then. There's Thin Lizzy, London Lightning, True by Spandeed Ballet. That was a huge album, but I wasn't big into new wave bands at that point. But I was hearing it a lot, and I don't even know if I even bought it years later. I think I bought Through the Barricades. But this one I only ultimately probably listened to when in the era of streaming. I think my middle brother had a copy of this. And I didn't buy anything by them until the second album. No Rest for the Wicked, debut Europe album. Script for a Jester's Tear. I love this album, but I didn't buy it until, mid to late 80s. But it's gone on to be like one of my favourite albums. So that's why it's not up here, because I didn't buy it when it came out. But yeah, it's got loads of cool stuff on it. And also, if you buy the remastered CD, which is ultimately, I think probably it's one of these albums that I probably own at least twice, maybe once on cassette and once on CD. This has got Grendel on it, which is probably my favourite track by them. There's also a really cool DVD to track down, which is where they played the whole of, I think it was called Recital of the Script, and that was actually done way back then. It's not a retrospective one, so that was pretty cool. I got that on DVD actually, and that's got for the encore they come on and do Grendel. Yeah, Eliminator I mentioned. The Final Cut, now there's a track on here. Is it one of the few? I don't know. There's definitely a track. Oh, it's this one, When the Tigers Broke Free. Now, yeah, this was the one that wasn't part of the album. Yeah, but that's right, it was in the film, wasn't it? Yeah, the movie version, The Wall. And then it says taken from the album Final Cut, but it wasn't on the album until the 2000. It's really weird, yeah. So I always associate with this being on The Wall, but it wasn't on the original album on The Wall, but it was in the film, so that's why. Yeah. So that's the only reason why I really remember this album. All Power and the Glory by Saxon. We definitely had this in the house. My youngest brother was a big Saxon fan. I actually saw them in, when was it? 85. But the weird thing is, it was on the Crusader tour, but it wasn't in 84. I know that. Yeah. I just remember them playing Crusader, but maybe it was supporting this album. When did that come out? September 85. It's possible, I'm not sure though. Yeah. So I have seen Saxon once. Oh, this album was huge at the time. I don't think I've ever owned a copy though. It was just so insidious is the wrong word, but I think you know what I mean. It's just, you know, every time you switched on daytime radio, they were playing it. Played it quite a bit at clubs and things like that. Rock for Light by Brad Brains. That's the second album, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of people don't realise that Pulp were around in '83. Album It was out. Bought this album when it came out. I don't know, I didn't really warm to this. I bought it, but it just sounded too much like... They already sounded a little bit like AC/DC, but on this album I found it just got to the point where I found it really hard to listen to. Yeah, so... But I do have that album. Listened by A Flock of Seagulls. What were they? Second album by then. Didn't listen to them till a lot later. Rather sad I didn't listen to them when they came out. Actually, they just looked wrong for what I was in at the time. So I don't know if I mentioned earlier on, but you know, '83, I was definitely transitioning from being really into hard rock metal. That was still the case in '83, and then towards the end of the '83, when the senior tech that was my boss did sort of move up when the lab moved, because he was offered like a, you know, what would you call it, like money for moving, for relocating, like relocation fees, stuff like that. And just before he sort of packed up and went, he said, "Oh yeah, I've been listening to a lot of these, you know, like non-hard rock, non-metal guitar bands. I think you'd really like them." So it wasn't until probably '84 that I did that. And the end of '84 I went to see Big Country live. And then I sort of got a bit hooked by a lot of these alternate guitar bands. And then off the back of that, through getting into them, I sort of went through this other route of sort of goth bands, and then looped back into some new romantic bands, which are a bit sort of in that real interesting sort of crossover area. And then through that, started to listen to A Flock of Seagulls, but that was a lot later. That would have been sometime in the 90s probably. You remember this coming out, the second album by them. Fastway, which was debut album by... So wasn't this bizarre thing where by the time the album came out, Pete Way, so it was Fast Eddie Clarke's and Pete Way's band, after they'd both Fast Eddie Clarke left Motorhead, Pete Way had left UFO, because I think when I saw UFO, Pete Way wasn't in the band. I saw them sometime in, I think, '85 or '86, and I think Paul Gray was playing for them at that point, and Atomic Tommy actually. Yeah, I think Paul Raymond was in the band then. But anyway, I've digressed. But yeah, so Pete Wade left UFO, Fast Eddie Clarke left Motorhead, so they formed Fastway, but then he didn't stick around. I think he ended up in Wasted, but wasn't that via... didn't he play in Ozzy Osbourne's band for a short period of time, I thought? I don't know. There was that period. There was a lot of people swapping over bands, I think, in that period. You know, we had like Motorhead with Brian Robertson in them, and yeah, it's a pretty interesting period. Wasn't this the year? We'll have to see in a moment. I won't spoil it, but there was another band who had quite a major changeover, I think, which was a little bit weird. But we'll see. I don't know if it was this year or not. I had a Step by Minor Threat. This is a really cool EP. I have some version of this on CD, I think. But I think I've got it as some sort of amalgamation of things, maybe. Yeah. Not sure though. I didn't really get into them until the sort of streaming era. And I'm probably more familiar with with. So Ian McKay, what was the band Fugazi was really where I started off, more than Minor Threat. So. Was it In on the Kill Taker, I think I bought, but I didn't buy it when it came out. This album, so I remember buying this, and Low Life was the album I sort of bought it when it came out, played it to death. This one I bought after it came out, but before Low Life. But I remember really being really disappointed because it didn't have, although Age of Consent's really good, it didn't have, I was expecting it to have Blue Monday on it, and it doesn't. It has this other track which is sort of Blue Monday-esque track on it. So being pretty disappointed at the time, and then going out and buying the 12-inch single of Blue Monday. At some point. Holy Diver by Dio, debut album. There's Another Perfect Day. That was Duck Rock by Malcolm McLaren. Don't know if anybody remembers that album. That was pretty ahead of its time. I didn't buy this until a few years later. I had a friend of mine who's a really big Billy Bragg fan, kept on about it, and it took me a while to check it out. I've since seen Billy Bragg probably about 2 or 3 times. Once in the fairly early days, but after this album was released, so sometime probably again 85, 86. Then I saw him again in that period as part of a thing called the Red Wedge Tour. And then I saw him a few years ago, I think it must have been before COVID. He played Halifax, so yeah, that was really good. Back to Mystery City. Oh, by the way, that's got what was New England on it? Yeah, his version, so incredibly stripped down, just him and the guitar. A lot of people are probably more familiar with the Kirsty MacColl version. Back to Mystery City. They were on their 4th album by then. It's hard to believe, isn't it? When I first got into Hanoi Rocks, I didn't realise how late I was to the party. So I didn't listen to them until after this album. I had a cassette with this and 2 Steps from the Move on it. It's one of those double cassettes. And then, as you saw in a way back My Life in Objects episode, I got that really nice Hanoi Rocks box set of CDs. 11th Hour by Magnum. So this came out after Chase the Dragon. Years later, I sort of looped back and sort of bought some of their earlier stuff. I'd always been aware of them, and stuff by them got played on the Friday Rock Show, but never properly checked them out until probably, I don't know, the late 80s, where I bought some of their earlier stuff. I think there would seem to be renewed interest because didn't they start to do reasonably well in the US sometime after this period, I think. So I noticed a lot of their albums started appearing again in the UK on cassette. So, yeah. I don't think I've ever listened to this album. I was very late to party with Japan. I think my lead-in album was probably Assemblage, and then I bought Quiet Life probably this year, because I remember playing parts of Quiet Life when I used to go out clubbing. So yeah, but they were on. So was this released 6 months after they broke up? Yeah. So, and I was aware of tracks, by them over the years, like Ghosts and Quiet Life and European Sun and Life in Tokyo. But yeah, this was their 3rd album. I think we had this in the house, I'm not sure. I didn't buy it though. I went to see them sporting Motorhead sometime in maybe 82, I think it was, at the Crawley Leisure Centre. Yeah, I remember this coming out. Yeah, this was huge at the time. I didn't buy this until a lot later. And I can remember when I started going to Brighton College towards the end of '83. So I was originally doing Crawley College, and then I did 2 years at Brighton College, same setup. Yeah, that time, because it was Brighton, we went down the whole day, didn't go on a separate evening. It was just 9 to 9 to the night, to drive down there, drive back. So, I'd probably be leaving to go and pick people up at about 5, 6 in the morning. Well, maybe 6 in the morning. It was pretty early, I seem to remember, because we used to take it in turns to drive. And, yeah. So where I'm going with this is one of the people I used to drive down with this would play this all the time. So I got a bit sick of it. Similar to, I think, what was the other one? I don't know if I mentioned it yet. I remember when So by Peter Gabriel came out. One of my brothers had it, and it got played so much in the car, I just got fed up with it. So, yeah. And then years later, I bought a copy of this. But it's a really good album. Into Glory Ride. What's this second Man of War album? Wow. Fire Dances by Killing Joke. I wasn't really keeping up with them. I'd bought, I think I mentioned I'd bought Revelations, and then it was just a bit too much at that point to handle. I just couldn't quite get my head around the sound they had at that point. So I was a bit apprehensive about buying anything else by them, and didn't really buy anything until the album after this. And then I went to see them live and was then hooked. Kill 'Em All by Metallica. Didn't get into Metallica until the following album, and then bought this after the fact. I did buy this, but probably the following year, because there were some things on here I really enjoyed. Didn't he do a really good cover of Love Will Tear Us Apart? Yeah. There's quite a number of covers on there. Debut Madonna album. There's The Crossing. So I didn't buy that until sometime 84, 85. I went to see them supporting Steel Town in tail end of 84. Atmospheres. Yeah, I didn't listen to Brian Eno until a lot later, and all of his stuff really I've listened to mainly in the era of streaming. I'm trying to remember the first album I bought before I really started to be on Spotify. It was probably one of the ambient, the ones that sort of lay, probably Ambient 1 actually, thinking about it. Out for Blood by Lita Ford, debut album. Second Asia album. Yeah. We probably would have been talking about this a lot, about this at work, because the guy that was in charge of me, the senior tech, he was big into Asia. Queensryche EP came out then. Flick of the Switch. Construction Time again, another album I didn't get into until a lot later, probably somewhere around 86, 87. I went on a bit of Depeche Mode jag after Music for the Masses came out. All for One by Raven. That was their third album? Yeah. This one, yeah. This is the one I was trying to think of. So you remember I was saying there was a lot of albums out that year where, we had Motorhead with Brian Robinson in the band, and we had like Fastway, which was supposed to have Pete Way but didn't, and then UFO sort of hadn't quite reconfigured totally by then, but getting close to it. And then we had this. So we got Black Sabbath with Ian Gillan singing. And I remember hearing on the radio when they played Reading, it must have been. It's either Reading or what's the other place? Castle Donington, one of the two. I think it was Reading. And they did play with Ian Gillan fronting them. And they actually did Smoke on the Water, I'm pretty sure. That's what I remember. But again, I could have got muddled up. But yeah. Oh, that cover. There's a really cool, I don't know what documentary it's on. It's not on Metal Headbanger's Journey. There was another one that came out around the same time that looked a little bit like it was trying to cash in on it. and it had a number of interviews, mainly were just with a different group of people, and it was more focused, I think, a lot more on like hard rock and metal bands, and I don't know who did it, but anyway, I remember there's an interview there with Crusher, I don't know his proper name, who actually designed the cover, talking about, yeah, that's right. So there's a whole story around that. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, I didn't really keep up with Michael Schenker Group. This was what with Graham Bonnet. I really like Gary Barden, I think, as vocalist. So no, this was the one where he returned on, didn't he? Sorry, yeah, I'm getting muddled up. So I hadn't kept up. That was right. He played Reading, and I don't know what happened, but I remember Gary Barden coming out and going, surprise, surprise. So he'd like rejoined Michael Schenker Group just before they played Reading, and then around the same time they released this album. So from what I remember, because Reading would have been in August, I think, of that year, which probably would have been the same year that Black Sabbath played. So if I've got that right. Shout to the Devil by Motley Crue. Bent Out of Shape by Rainbow. Was that what was their last album? Oh, because technically, because at this point, so it's 8th album, 12th studio album in 12 years, because he'd gone off and pursued a sort of solo career, hadn't he? So yeah. So for me, that was their final album. Final studio album. Because wasn't there something they released after that called like Final Vinyl, which collected together all sort of bits and pieces from various things? So I'd spoken in a previous episode about buying this when it came out, because in Europe it was available a lot earlier, but 83 was when they released like a US remix. Diamond Head, third album. I think they pretty much packed up after this, didn't they? I do remember years later them doing a follow-up album. Mean Street by Y&T. I wasn't really keeping up with them, and again I couldn't really afford to keep up with a lot of this because I just put a lot of money into buying a car. It's like the cheapest car I could afford as well. It was like I think a 12-year-old Hillman Avenger or something. Yeah, it's hard times. Can't slow down. So what did this have on it? All Night Long, Penny Lover, Stuck on You, Running with the Night. So after and whenever All Night Long came out, which would have been August. That's why I heard it a lot at the clubs in the summer, the end of the summer. This came out in October, and then you would, I remember October into Christmas, the same clubs I was sort of going to, playing, you go on, several weeks later, and then they'd be playing other tracks off the album or whatever singles were released. As you can see here, into 84. Song reminding the debut album by them. Snap by The Jam, which I'd already mentioned, compilation album. Head Over Heels, Cocktail Twins, that's their second album. So there's a lot of bands starting up this year, which then later on I'd go to listen to around the time I was sort of going gigging, 85, so going to see Sister of Mercy, a lot more sort of, bands that were either goth or part of the goths used to really like. And it used to be cool when I went to several bands gig. You was really nice cross section of fans. So Killing Joke had a sort of really diverse crowd. Funny enough, I went to see the Ramones. That was pretty diverse, actually. All sorts of people that were into different music went to see Ramones. Yeah. Live album by Thin Lizzy, out that year. That's where they had sort of different members of the band. It was their farewell tour. According to their farewell tour. Hell Hath No Fury by Rock Goddess. So second album. So 2 albums out that year then. I bought that when it came out. No, hang on. No, sorry, what am I saying? I didn't, did I? That was a little while after I bought that. Yeah. Maybe into the following year. Yeah. Yeah, because I remember now, yeah, it's coming back to me now. I can remember sometime 84 into 85, and I used to go and meet a friend on a Friday night for a drink. We used to talk a lot about the band, and that was more like 84, and I remember seeing them on the TV as part of that Live from London series that I've mentioned before. And yeah, so that's around the time I saw that on them on TV, and then went out and bought the album. Yeah, so that would have been a bit later. I'd mentioned that. There's probably quite a lot here that I've inadvertently skipped over. Show No Mercy by Slayer. I think I didn't buy that until several years later, where I looped back and in the course of 1 year bought all the debut albums by 3 of the big 4, because I already had Megadeth's first album, but I didn't have Show No Mercy. I didn't have what's the first Anthrax album? Fistful of Metal. And I didn't have Kill 'Em All. So all around the same time I went back, and sometime 84, 85 went back and bought those. So that's when I bought that. I actually quite like that period of Slayer and Anthrax. It's a little bit different than what they went on to be like. It's pretty interesting sound. Because to me, like, the difference between, there's quite a big contrast anyway, sound wise, between this album and what followed it. So that would have been what? So Show No Mercy into Hell Awaits, I think. They were also, didn't what's the track? Metal Storm? Didn't they have some sort of cameo appearance in a film at the time as well? I just seem to remember that. Is it them and Wasp? There was a bit of a trend at that point, and it's a thing you see occasionally over the year, like someone goes to a club somewhere and there's a band playing in a club. And I remember seeing a couple of videos around 84, 85 maybe, where one, I think it was Wasp playing live in the club, and another time it was Slayer, I'm pretty sure. It's part of the film, so they had this cameo role. But again, I might be misremembering here. Yeah, it doesn't always score very well with certain publications, but I really like it. Okay, so moving on, what did we miss, or what did I miss in metal? A lot of stuff, actually, because I wasn't really keeping up. So, obviously I've flagged up certain stuff I did listen to, certain stuff that came up in the when we went through, just gone through 83 there. But yeah, loads of bands that I didn't really lock into. I did listen to Balls to the Wall by Accept, but I thought that came out a little bit later. Yeah, I didn't make my list. Anyway, so I do remember that coming out, but I just could not remember when I bought it. So I think I bought it the following year, because I just, yeah, was pretty short of money. And there's a lot of stuff here that I bought a lot later than No Parole from Rock and Roll by Alcatraz. Armored Saint I never really got a chance to listen to until a lot later, until the time of what did they do? What was the album? Oh, there was a Metal Church album that I bought, and there was an Armored Saint album that came out that was put out after the guitarist had died. I just can't remember what it's called. Anyway, I could probably check here, couldn't I? So the album I bought by them, and these other albums I've listened to subsequently on streaming. So yeah, no, not Saints Will Conquer. Symbol of Salvation. So not until '91 I actually got to listen to them. So yeah, great vocalist though. Well, great band, but yeah. John Bush, and of course John Bush ended up in Anthrax for a while, and was supposed to be in Metallica at some point. Rebel Yell by Billy Idol, bought that well after the fact, not until I checked out that sort of compilation album. What's this got on it? Is this I don't remember any of this, I don't think, no. There's Pyromania by Def Leppard, which I think I flagged up. That's got yeah, Rock to Drop Photograph. So this is the album that who was it? Phil Collins joined. Who's originally in, was he in the band Girl? If I got that right. Yeah. Who I was aware of their work. Oh, that's right. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, I'd mentioned that night because I was still jagging on High and Dry. So yeah. Well, yeah, so much stuff I didn't listen to until years later. Peace of Mind. Get them all. I already mentioned about that. I don't know which Vixen this is actually. I think there's several versions around that time. So yeah, this must be the one with Marty Friedman. There's a later one as well. Unless it's the same band, it could be. I mean, I don't think so. Oh yeah, there we go. That's the one I'm thinking of. The other Vixen, yep. Vandenberg. Didn't he end up in Whitesnake at some point? I think so. Talus, that was that bass player's band, wasn't it? Yeah, Billy Sheehan. Oh, Rat EP. Wow. It's Metal Magic by Pantera. Debut album. So quite a bit different back then. I'm trying to remember who the lead singer would have been at that point. Oh, Terry Glaze, that's it. Yeah. Interesting album cover there. And then this album by Gary Moore, originally recorded in 1980, but then came out in... yeah, there was a lot of... It was very strange because you've got like Victims of the Future out, then the record label decided to release, so it just got really messy with his like trying to follow his career, because then he had G-Force, which is a spin-off band. Yeah, I think I own this album, I'm not sure. Certainly bought that up at some point, Victims of the Future. Oh wow. Yeah. So basically, yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of stuff that I just didn't buy that year, and didn't buy till a lot later because of financial constraints. So this is what was out film-wise in year release. So yeah, Return of the Jedi. Definitely would have gone to see that at the cinema. I didn't see Flashdance until a lot later. Trading Places, I can't remember if I saw that at the cinema or not. There's a lot of stuff here that I watched on video when we got a video recorder the following year, I think. Either this year or the following year. So things like, you know, Flashdance, War Games, Octopussy, maybe didn't see till then, but I know I definitely saw Return of the Jedi at that point. There's a reissue of this as well. So we've got Staying Alive, Mr. Mum, Risky Business, and then the sort of week by week, and again I'm using the US stats here. Just I was finding the 80s a bit difficult to get consistency in the UK stats on Wikipedia, so I decided not to do that just for consistency. So we're looking at US number one films here. So Tootsie, I Rode to China, Spring Break, Tootsie again, Lone Wolf, McQuaid, Flashdance, Blue Thunder. Was that the one with the helicopter? I think so. Wasn't that part of yeah, I remember the TV series more than I remember the film probably. This one, Space Hunter, yeah, these ones. Space Hunter, Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. That's got Molly Ringwald in it. Yeah, I saw this a lot later on VHS, on video. Well, there's Return of the Jedi, Superman 3. Pretty sure I saw that at the cinema. Jaws 3D, Staying Alive, National Lampoon's Vacation. That's a classic, but didn't watch that until we got video. Easy Money, didn't see that. Mr. Mum, not to go out on video. Never Say Never Again. See, the James Bond films possibly I saw at the cinema. We used to make a point of going to those, and we got Sudden Impact, which is Dirty Harry. I can't remember whether I saw this at the cinema or not. You see, yeah. Anyway, so there we have it. Wow, that was a pretty interesting year. Like I said, didn't buy a lot of stuff at the time, but subsequently listened to it. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.